Hey there, students. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Anti-Federalists, the people who oppose the ratification of the Constitution after the Philadelphia Convention. Remember that the Constitution had to be ratified by 9 of the 13 states, but in several states, the Anti-Federalists were dominant, including states like Virginia and New York, without whom you wouldn't really be able to put together a new union if they weren't involved. Now, why is it that people had a problem with the Constitution? I mean, after all, don't we all love the Constitution? We interpret it differently, but we all like it. If somebody says the Constitution is like, yeah, that sort of thing. Well, the Anti-Federalists, when they looked at the Constitution versus the Articles, they had a lot of problems because remember that the primary objective of the Constitution was to create a stronger central government, and for many reasons the Anti-Federalists were threatened by that. And first of all, they believed that this Constitution would undermine republicanism. Now, what republicanism is, as understood by these people, this would be kind of like the Roman Republic. A republic describes a government that is a commonwealth. That is how it translates, the common property. And this is a government that is subject to the people. And they believed that this government established by the Constitution would not be subject to the people because it would be too far away from the people and it would be subject to domination by special interest. And they specifically noted the lack of term limits and the lack of rotation in office. The Articles provided for people to be term limited, and also states could recall delegates if they were not acting in accordance with the will of the government of that state. And they believed that this government would be so far away from the people that it would create more of an aristocracy. And this government, in their view, also failed to respect the rights of the states. In creating a stronger central government, this means that the states have to give up power. And the Anti-Federalists, being Republican in character, they believed that the only true Republican government can be a state government that's closer to the people. When you take that government farther away, then that's going to cause problems. Now, that's an Anti-Federalist view. Keep in mind that James Madison in Federalist 10 is arguing that you can have a large republic, but there was a lot of doubt about that. And as far as some of the rights of the states that were compromised, the primary thing was the Constitution's allowance of federal taxation, which Patrick Henry wrote as an Anti-Federalist that he believed, now look, we've got 2 tax gatherers coming in. Now we've got to pay taxes to the state government and to the federal government. Now, is that going to allow the federal government to collect money more efficiently? Yes. But in Patrick Henry's view, this was also a threat to freedom. That brings me to my next point, that the Anti-Federalists believed that the Constitution could establish a tyranny. Remember Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. And this is really kind of an Anti-Federalist mantra, that while the Federalists are thinking we need a stronger central government so that we can be a stronger nation, a greater nation, and all of that kind of stuff, the Anti-Federalists believe if we're not free, none of that's worth anything to us. And you can see this emphasis on liberty, freedom, resistance to tyranny in some of the pseudonyms they used. For example, Brutus. We call to mind the assassination of the tyrant Julius Caesar. Also, Cato is another name used by Anti-Federalist. Another is federal farmer, which reminds us that the farmers were more likely to be Anti-Federalist. The farther you go out away from the coastal cities, the more likely people were to be against the Constitution, because the Philadelphia Convention was dominated by commercial interests. Look at Delaware, for example. Delaware was the first state to ratify the Constitution, but it's all on the coast, and it doesn't have any backcountry. So the Anti-Federalists were concentrated in that backcountry. And finally, really the biggest sticking point for the Anti-Federalist, and this was where the Federalists had to give some ground in order to ratify the Constitution, was that there was no Bill of Rights. While the Constitution said, okay, this is the scope of the government's powers, it didn't have any thou shalt nots. And that is what the Anti-Federalists really wanted more than anything, is that you see a thou shalt not. There've got to be some lines drawn here. So keep that in mind, that they think of government as a creature that if it's not properly kept in line, then there are going to be problems. And so not only should you define the scope of a government's powers, but you should make it clear what this government is not to do. Now, Alexander Hamilton argued in Federalist 84 that we don't need a Bill of Rights because the powers of the government are already outlined in the Constitution, and of course the government's not going to exceed those powers, right? Government doesn't do that. The Anti-Federalists weren't buying that nonsense. And the Anti-Federalists, at least the moderate Anti-Federalists, if a Bill of Rights was added, they were fine with it. They felt like that guaranteed the sovereignty of the states, it guaranteed the rights of the people. So in this sense, the Anti-Federalists really have something valuable to pass on to us. The ratification of the Constitution was not just a victory for the Federalists and a defeat for the Anti-Federalists. This was really, yet again, a process of compromise, where the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists had to come together, and the Federalists had to accede to the Anti-Federalist demand that there be a Bill of Rights. So remember that in terms of republicanism, states' rights, resistance to tyranny, and agrarian opposition, and also the lack of a Bill of Rights. These were the problems of the Anti-Federalists with the Constitution. And after the Bill of Rights was added, enough Anti-Federalists were converted so that the Constitution could be ratified. And that about wraps that one up. Subscribe if you want to hear more history and politics and government and philosophy and all of that good stuff. Visit my website, tomrichey.net. All kinds of good stuff there. And also remember that I'm on Twitter, Instagram, even Facebook. Like, dislike, comment, get in touch with me. Would love to hear from you. Until next time.